my golden child twin sister stole my college essay and got expelled. Years later, she seduced my fiancé 7 days before our wedding. But when she drunkenly confessed everything, and he came crawling back, my answer left them all broken. I'm 27 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer. And there's a story I've been carrying for over a year now that I need to get off my chest because it basically destroyed everything I thought I had built. It's not easy to talk about this, honestly. But I guess it's time for someone to hear my version of what happened. Because trust me, the version my family tells is completely different. And the worst part of it all is that I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully get over it, but at least now I can talk about it without my voice breaking every 2 minutes. So I guess that's progress. Let me start from the beginning. I'm a twin. I have a twin sister named Savannah, and we're identical. Literally the same face, the same body, everything. When we were kids, people couldn't tell us apart even if they wanted to, and my parents used to dress us the same because, that's what people do with twins, like we were dolls or something. But here's the thing, and this is important. Even though we were physically identical, my parents always, and when I say always, I mean always, treated Savannah like she was special and me like I was her boring shadow. I don't know how to explain it well, but for as long as I can remember, Savannah was the golden child, the princess, the one who could do whatever she wanted without consequences, while I was basically invisible unless I did something wrong. I'll give you concrete examples because I know it sounds weird. When we were 8 years old, we both wanted to take piano lessons. My parents paid for a private teacher for Savannah, but told me I could learn by watching her classes. When we were 12, Savannah wanted a new phone and got it the next day. But when I asked for one because mine was literally broken, they told me I had to wait until my birthday, which was in 6 months. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. That maybe I was problematic or something. But I swear I wasn't. I was the good kid. The one who got excellent grades. The one who helped around the house without being asked. And still, it was like I didn't exist to them. Savannah could come home late, skip dinner, scream and throw tantrums, and my parents would just say, "Oh, she has a strong personality." But if I came home 15 minutes late, I'd get a half-hour sermon about responsibility. We grew up like that, with this sick dynamic where she could do whatever she wanted, and I had to be perfect just to receive the minimum amount of attention. And the worst part is that Savannah knew it. I mean, she knew perfectly well she was the favorite and used it to her advantage. If she wanted something of mine, she'd just take it, and when I complained, my parents would tell me to stop being selfish, that sharing is what good sisters do. If we had a fight, no matter who started it, I always ended up punished because I was supposed to be the mature one, the one who gave in. It was exhausting, honestly, and there came a point where I stopped trying to win their approval because clearly it was never going to happen. Things got really bad when we got to college. We both applied to the same university, a pretty good one in the state, and we both got accepted. I was studying graphic design and Savannah was in literature, and during the first year things were relatively calm because we barely saw each other on campus. But in our second year we had to take a mandatory creative writing class, and this is where everything started to really fall apart. The class required us to write a long personal essay, 20 pages, about some significant experience in our lives. I worked on that essay for weeks, literally weeks, because writing isn't my strong suit and I wanted to do it well. I wrote about what it felt like to grow up being invisible in your own family, about the favoritism, about all the pain I'd carried for years. It was super personal and honest, probably too much, but the professor had told us she wanted vulnerability and authenticity. I showed the essay to Savannah one night because we lived in the same dorm, which was a terrible idea in retrospect, but my parents had insisted we live together to save money. She read it and said it was good, that it was emotional and stuff, and I felt good because it was rare for her to give me a compliment. What I didn't know is that same night, when I fell asleep, she copied my entire essay from my laptop. A week later, the professor called me to her office and told me we needed to talk about my work. I arrived thinking maybe I'd gotten a bad grade or something, but no. Turns out Savannah had submitted my essay, word for word, as if it were hers, and she'd submitted it 2 days before I did. I sat there in that office unable to believe it, literally speechless, while the professor showed me the 2 identical copies and asked me what had happened. I explained the whole situation, that it was my essay, that I had the drafts saved with earlier dates, that I had notes in my notebook about the writing process, everything. The professor believed me. Thank God. because when she checked the file dates and my notes, it was clear I was the original author. But she told me she had to report it officially because it was a clear case of plagiarism, and the university has strict policies about that. And here comes what changed everything. I reported Savannah for plagiarism. I didn't do it to get revenge or to ruin her life. I did it because it was the right thing to do, and because I was tired of her constantly stepping all over me without consequences. The university took the case super seriously because plagiarism is basically the worst academic crime you can commit, and after an investigation that lasted like a month, they expelled Savannah. Not only did they expel her, but they put her on a blacklist that they shared with other universities in the state system, which basically meant she couldn't transfer to any other public university in the state. It was devastating for her, obviously, and when my parents found out, they exploded. My mom called me crying, screaming at me about how I could do that to my sister, that I'd ruined her life, that I was envious and a bad sister. My dad was worse. He told me I was vindictive, that I'd always been resentful of Savannah because she was more charismatic and more loved than me, which was like a stab in the stomach, because he was basically confirming everything I'd felt for years. I tried to explain to them that she had stolen my work, that I hadn't done anything wrong, but they didn't want to listen to me. For them, I was the villain of the story, the jealous sister who had destroyed her favorite daughter's future. After that, I basically cut contact with my family. It wasn't a dramatic decision like I'm leaving and never seeing you again. It was more that I stopped answering calls, stopped going to family dinners, stopped trying to get them to see me as something more than the problematic sister. It was liberating, honestly, to stop seeking their approval. I focused on finishing my degree, got a part-time job at a small design agency, and basically built my own life without them. It was lonely sometimes. I'm not going to lie, but it was better than being surrounded by people who made me feel like trash. And then I met Ethan. This was in my 3rd year of college, in a photography class I took as an elective. Ethan was studying marketing. He was like 23 years old because he'd started college late, and he was the type of person who lit up any room he was in. I don't know how to explain it well, but he had this energy that made you feel comfortable immediately, like you could tell him anything and he wouldn't judge you. We became friends first, like we'd spend hours talking after class about everything and nothing, and eventually that friendship turned into something more. We started officially dating like 6 months after we met, and it was the first time in my life I felt like someone really saw me, you know? Ethan listened when I talked, remembered little things I mentioned casually, made me feel important and valued. I told him about my family, about Savannah, about all the hell I'd lived through, and he was super understanding. He told me he understood why I'd cut contact, that I deserved to be surrounded by people who appreciated me, and that he was going to be that person for me. And for 4 years, he was. 4 years of a relationship I thought was solid, of building a life together, of planning a future. Ethan proposed to me on a random Tuesday in April. Nothing super elaborate or anything, just the two of us in our apartment watching a movie, and he asked me if I wanted to marry him. I said yes without thinking twice because it was what I wanted. To be with him forever. To build the family I never had. He put a ring on me that he'd bought with his savings. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was perfect. And I started planning the wedding for that same year in September. This is where the problems started. Although at the time I didn't see them coming. Ethan started insisting that I invite my family to the wedding. I told him no, that I'd gone years without talking to them and didn't want drama on the most important day of my life, but he insisted it was important, that they were my family, that I'd regret not having them there. His mother Linda also got involved, telling me she understood my situation, but that weddings were moments for healing, for bringing families together. I eventually gave in because I thought maybe they were right, that maybe it was time to be the bigger person and give my family a chance. I sent invitations to my parents in Savannah, like 3 months before the wedding. I didn't expect them to come honestly, and part of me hoped they'd decline the invitation so I wouldn't have to deal with the awkwardness of seeing them after so long. But they responded that, yes, they were going to come, all 3 of them, and that they were excited to see me and meet Ethan. It seemed weird to me because we hadn't talked in years and suddenly they were acting like everything was fine. But Ethan was so happy they'd accepted that I didn't want to ruin his enthusiasm. 1 week before the wedding, exactly 1 week, Ethan told me my parents wanted to meet with me to talk before the event. He said they wanted to apologize, that they wanted to fix things, and that it would be good if we met in a neutral place, like a cafe or something. I agreed because, I don't know, I guess part of me still had hope that maybe we could have a normal relationship. We arranged to meet at a cafe near my apartment on a Wednesday afternoon. I arrived at the cafe with Ethan, and my parents were already there sitting at a table in the back. I walked over, feeling the nerves in my stomach, and then I saw her. Savannah was sitting there with them, smiling like nothing, like she hadn't stolen my work and ruined my last year of college. I froze. Literally couldn't move. And I told Ethan they'd tricked me, that I'd agreed to see my parents, not her. My parents started with a speech about family and forgiveness, and how important it was for Savannah and me to fix our differences before the wedding, because it was a family event and blah blah blah. I got up from the table and left. I just turned around and walked out of the cafe without saying anything else, because I knew if I stayed, I was going to explode or cry or both. I expected Ethan to follow me. You know? I expected him to understand that they'd betrayed me again, that they'd lied to me to force me to see Savannah. But he didn't follow me. He stayed there at the cafe with them. And when he finally came back to the apartment like 2 hours later, he told me he'd been talking to my family, that they just wanted what was best for me, that Savannah was really sorry. I told him I didn't care, that they'd shown over and over again that they didn't care about me but only about Savannah, and that I never wanted to see them again. Ethan got angry, told me I was being immature, that I was ruining the chance to heal my relationship with my family. We had a horrible fight that night. We screamed things we probably shouldn't have screamed, and he ended up going to sleep at his mother's house. I thought he just needed time to calm down, that the next day we'd talk and work it out like we always did. But the next day, he didn't come back. Or the next. Or the next. For 7 days, a whole week, Ethan completely ignored me. He didn't answer my calls, my messages, nothing. I went to his mother's house and Linda told me he wasn't there, that he needed space, that I should give him time. I was desperate, like completely lost, because the wedding was in a week and my fiancé had disappeared. I tried contacting his friends, his brother, anyone who might know where he was, but no one told me anything, or I didn't know. On the 5th day of not knowing anything about him, I started canceling the wedding arrangements. I called the venue and told them I needed to cancel. I called the photographer, the catering service, everyone. I lost the deposits, obviously, but I didn't care, because it was clear the wedding wasn't going to happen. You can't marry someone who won't even talk to you, you know? I cried so much during those days I thought I had no more tears left in my body. My friends came to the apartment to stay with me because I was literally destroyed, not understanding what had happened, how we'd gone from being engaged and happy to this. And then, on the day that was supposed to be my wedding, I saw the posts on social media. Ethan had gotten married that day. To Savannah. My fiancé had married my twin sister on the same day we were supposed to get married. I have no words to describe what I felt in that moment. Like it's as if my brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. There were pictures of them in a suit and white dress, smiling, with my parents by their side super happy. It was surreal, like a nightmare you couldn't wake up from. It took me months, literally months, to be able to function normally after that. I stopped eating well, lost like 15 pounds, couldn't sleep, spent entire days in bed without energy to do anything. My friends took turns coming to take care of me because honestly, I don't know if I would have survived without them. Eventually, I got a therapist and started working through all the trauma, not just from the wedding, but from my whole life, from my family's rejection, from everything. It was a slow and painful but necessary process. A whole year passed. An entire year in which I didn't know anything about any of them. And then Linda contacted me. She sent me like 20 messages in a row on a Tuesday night, begging me to please listen to her, that she needed to talk to me, that it was urgent. At first I ignored her because, obviously, I didn't want to know anything about the mother of the man who had destroyed me, but she kept insisting, saying she owed me an explanation, that I deserved to know the truth. Eventually, I agreed to meet her at a public park, a place where there would be people around just in case. Linda arrived crying, with red and swollen eyes like she'd gone days without sleeping well. She sat down across from me and apologized, told me she'd made the biggest mistake of her life by pressuring me to invite my family to the wedding, and then she told me everything. Turns out that after I left the cafe that day, Savannah and my parents stayed talking to Ethan for hours. They filled his head with lies about me, told him I'd been a problematic daughter all my life, that I'd made up stories about the favoritism because I was jealous, that I'd ruined Savannah's life out of pure envy. They told him I was manipulative, that I was probably lying to him about many things, that he had to be careful. With me, Ethan, according to Linda, started doubting me. He started questioning whether he really knew me, if there were signs he'd ignored. Savannah apparently showed him old newspaper clippings from when she got expelled from the university, twisting the story to make it seem like I'd lied about the plagiarism to get her expelled. My parents backed up every lie Savannah told, painting me as a horrible and vindictive person. And Ethan, the idiot, believed them. He believed them over me. After 4 years of a relationship, Linda told me through tears that Savannah basically seduced Ethan. During that week, he wasn't talking to me. That she convinced him she was the good sister, the one who really loved him, the one who would never lie to him. And the most twisted part is that Ethan agreed to marry her not because he really loved her, but because he'd already spent so much money on the wedding, because he felt embarrassed to cancel everything, because Savannah told him they could make it work. Linda confessed to me that from the wedding day she knew it was a mistake, that she saw in Ethan's eyes that he wasn't happy, but that everyone had already made their decisions. She told me that during the year that followed, the marriage between Ethan and Savannah was a complete disaster. That Savannah was getting more and more controlling and manipulative, that Ethan slept on the couch most nights, that they argued constantly, and that like a month ago Savannah got drunk at a family dinner and the truth slipped out. She confessed in front of everyone that she'd lied about me, that she'd stolen my essay in college, that she'd manipulated Ethan to get him away from me. She confessed everything, probably because she was so drunk she couldn't keep up the facade. Ethan was apparently devastated when he found out the truth. According to Linda, he spent days not talking, processing everything, realizing he'd ruined his life and mine by believing the wrong person. He tried to talk to Savannah about a divorce, but she flatly refused, told him that if he tried to divorce her, she was going to make his life impossible, that she was going to take everything from him, that she was going to ruin him. And my parents, of course, backed her up completely, telling Ethan he had to make the marriage work, that he couldn't get divorced because that would destroy Savannah. Linda told me all this crying, apologizing over and over, saying her son had made the worst mistake of his life, and that he wanted to see me, that he wanted to apologize, that he wanted to fix things. She showed me messages Ethan had sent her where he said I'd been the love of his life, that he couldn't sleep thinking about what he'd done to me, that he'd do anything for me to forgive him. I sat there listening to her and felt nothing. I mean, I expected to feel satisfaction or vindication or something, but I just felt empty. I told Linda, no, that I didn't want to see Ethan, that I didn't care if he was sorry or not. I told her he'd made his decision a year ago, that he'd chosen to believe my family over me, that he'd chosen to marry my sister on the day that was supposed to be ours. I told her that the consequences of his actions were his problem, not mine, and that I'd spent a year rebuilding my life without him and wasn't planning to go back. Linda tried to insist, told me Ethan was suffering, that he deserved a chance to explain himself. And you know what I told her? I told her that Ethan deserved exactly what he had, a manipulative wife who wouldn't let him divorce, and a toxic in-law family that was going to control him for the rest of his life. I told her I'd suffered for a whole year because of his decisions, and now it was his turn to suffer the consequences. I blocked Linda after that conversation, blocked any way they could contact me. It's been like 4 months since that day, and I haven't heard anything more from them. I don't know if Ethan is still married to Savannah or if he finally managed to get divorced. And honestly, I don't care. I've moved on with my life. I work from home, doing graphic design for various clients. I have my friends. I have my peace of mind. I went on a couple of dates, but nothing serious because I'm still not ready for that. And maybe I won't be for a good while, and that's okay. The truth is, there are days when I still think about everything that happened, and it hurts. I'm not going to lie. There are nights when I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't invited my family to the wedding, if I'd been firmer with Ethan from the beginning, if things had been different. But I also know that none of what happened was my fault, that I didn't do anything wrong, that I was the victim in this whole horrible situation. And at the end of the day, I think it's enough to know that Ethan finally understands the truth, that he knows he lost me by believing the wrong people, and that now he has to live with that forever. That's his cross, too. Bear. Not mine.